You were born and raised in cities. Montreal, New York City, London. You've moved everywhere all around the world into your adult life, and it took a while for you to want to even slow down and stop moving. You decide to put down roots in Copenhagen, Denmark. What do you figure out? That actually going slower helps you go faster in the long run. This is one of my favorite conversations that I've ever had. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to Home Life for Extraordinary Impact. On this show, you'll get to witness some raw-in-the-moment research that I'm doing with experts and everyday people all around the world. What is it that I'm researching? One central question. How do you design your life at home for growth, connection, and making your greatest impact in the world? On this podcast, we'll do research, and you can follow along at homelifedesignlab.com. It's a newsletter that you can sign up. You'll get write-ups about this, deeper analysis. I'll say more about that at the end of the episode. I'm Matt Barrios. I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm a writer and a researcher. I'll be your host today as we're exploring what it looks like to design your life at home. And today I have a very special guest. We have Pia with us. And Pia is a coach, a founder of Collective Studio. She's going to introduce herself in a second. But first I want to say, Pia, thank you so much for being a part of this research and telling us just a little bit about your life at home so that it can hopefully provide some thoughts, some engagement, some inspiration for folks who are listening. So thanks for being part of it, Pia. And would you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. It's exciting. A bit about myself. Well, as you mentioned, I'm currently building a coaching and creativity studio, working to reimagine and realize new futures. So working with creators who might be feeling stuck, have an idea of the big picture is a bit hazy, need space to dream, to strategize, to plan, but really to think about what's next with a partner. More or less. And I also work with creative consultancy. I've been a creative director and copywriter for many years in the ad world. So channeling that energy into building my own and to working with creators, building their own authentic business and helping them create the platform in which to do that. So the combination feels potent and powerful to help people get unleashed and do what they really love in this big old life that we have a hidden expiration date on. So if I can be a part of that, that's so rewarding. Also for myself, modeling it first here, the ups and downs of building my own business, and then, helping people get unleashed to do what calls them and what they're, to design the life and the days of I'm going to use a cliche, of their dreams. So that was a long version.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And I know that you are a person who is drawn toward having an impact yourself and also kind of coaching people, unlocking people to have an impact in their work, their business as well. And so part of why I was so interested in interviewing you in particular, Pia, was because, this is Home Life for Extraordinary Impact. So we are trying to connect the dots between the way people are at home and their impact in the world, right? And for that to be authentic, for that to be very personal and kind of growing out of who they are. And I just see you as really an expert in that whole topic. So I'm so excited to talk to you. But and we'll dig deeper into like kind of your unique expertise in all of that in a moment. But first, would you tell me a little bit about the different places around the world that you have called home?
Quite a few. Home has always been sort of a strange concept to me because I never really had one for very long. So when I was very, very little, I was born in Sherbrooke, Quebec, Canada. My mom is French Canadian and my dad's American from New York City. And then we moved to Spain. And then we moved back to New York City on Lower East Side, Manhattan. And then my parents separated. Then I was in Brooklyn. And then I moved to Puerto Rico. Then I moved back to New York City. Then I moved to Montreal. Then I moved to Ottawa. Then I moved near Vermont to go to boarding school. It's another story. And then I moved back to Montreal. Then I moved back to New York City, and then I just continued that pattern as an adult because it became the default. Mm-hmm. So I've lived in Sri Lanka, Bahrain, London, France, Copenhagen now, which is finally my anchor. It's where I've dropped it for the past 10 years. So this has become the longest place I've ever lived consecutively.
Wow. I don't think I've ever heard a longer list of places that people have lived. That is pretty amazing.
Well, just to say all that, sorry to interrupt you, but I think the interesting part of that story for me is I always thought like home was very important to me, like what my home was like, and feeling cozy and feeling safe. And how do I make a place feel like home, even if I'm not going to be there for very long? And kind of always searching for what is home. Is New York City home? Is where do I belong? Also having parents from two different cultures. My dad's Jewish, my mom's French Canadian Catholic. It's just two different cultures. Yeah. And it took me quite a long time to realize that home is wherever I am. When I feel at home in myself as a person, like when I'm like, it also comes with age, but when you like feel at home, it doesn't really matter where you are, kind of just at home in your skin. And that's been a new realization that I'm really, really grateful for, because then it just feels very liberating. The search is over.
Wow.
But, right.
I find it interesting that like, yeah, this sounds like a kind of like a realization that's come with age and experience, and like, oh, I'm at home with myself. I have a sense of belonging even in my own person, in my own skin, right? Is there any connection between that realization and also like putting roots down in Copenhagen for you?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, actually, now that you ask, probably. Yeah, when I started seeing my therapist like 8 years ago in Copenhagen when I got divorced from my husband. And the first instinct that I had was, okay, I'm going to move to Paris. Done with this place. This didn't work out. On to the next thing, because it was always my default. It was easier. You just start fresh, and it's like, okay, do over, right? And she said something to me that was really interesting. She said, you could do that. You can keep doing that. You can keep moving. Or you could learn how to stay. And the benefits of learning how to stay could be deepening a relationship with yourself, to a place, to other people, that goes beyond like the honeymoon phase, which is also really exciting, but deeper. She's like, there's no judgment, and one is not good and the other one's not bad. It's just important to be aware that you get to choose. And I was like, oh, learning how to stay, huh? That sounds like a new adventure. So that's actually been the adventure, is learning not to be the nomad, and like, what is that like? So yeah, actually, I think staying probably helped deepen that realization, definitely. But only in retrospect.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I myself have been, relatively stationary, California, born and raised, kind of person. And I've traveled some, but, it's so interesting to hear for a person who's had a mostly nomadic lifestyle. And it seems like it's done something in you, right? Like it has helped you be the kind of person that you are, to have that sort of nomadic, go everywhere lifestyle. What would you tell us a little bit about what it's like to, what was born in you through being a person who goes around the world?
Oh, this is another great question, a big question. I think one of the greatest gifts moving gave me was just learning how to be with a lot of different types of people, and learning how to adapt and kind of feel good just talking and being in different spaces. So I've always kind of found a way to make friends quickly, to make connections quickly. They might not last, but they felt very meaningful to me, even if they might have just been for a season or a time. And it gave me that capability of, like, most of the time, also being American helps. When you live abroad, I've only come to observe this is also an American trait. Being very friendly. Like, we have a different idea of personal space. We're much more in each other's grill. In Copenhagen, there's like, people are like this. They kind of respect each other's space. And it's just been so nice to be able to just talk to anybody. I mean, I've met so many different types of people in my life, and I'm really grateful for that, because New York City also helps. New York City is a place where my dad's born and raised, but most people come from someplace else, or everyone's kind of a foreigner. And so I think that makes people much more open into having short-term like connections or meaningful moments, because people are kind of always on the move. There's a beauty to that.
Yeah.
Connection in a moment.
And I think the personal space thing is also, pretty interesting. Okay, so I love this stuff. I want to now talk about maybe more your present life and, your home in Copenhagen. So, paint a picture for us, like a little walkthrough. Let's say that you're getting home, what's happening, you open the door, whatever, walk us through it.
Okay, well, I will say this. When my husband and I first came to see this apartment, the minute we opened the door, we're like, because the ceilings are really, really high. So I don't know, I'm not going to ruin but there's like I don't know, you can't really see, but the ceilings are really, really high. So it's like an open space, like beautiful. Everything is open. And so we thought, oh my God, it just feels good for, I don't know, it just feels expansive, or just not like you're in a little box. And so we kind of just went, when we first walked in, and I still feel that way. Sometimes when I travel or I go someplace else, you don't realize like having lower ceilings just kind of makes you feel boxed in. It feels like,
or something.
What
do high ceilings do for you?
Here. It just feels open. It feels expansive. I don't feel like I'm in a box, My husband has 2 children that are 9 and 11, and we see them every other week. I didn't factor in kids because I'm not used to factoring kids into the open plan. I mean, we all have our own rooms, but, you have to learn how to be together differently, because the living room, and we have like 2 living rooms-ish, and the kitchen and the dining room, everything's open. So you have to learn how to cohabitate differently.
There's
there's no walls, so everything is open. So you have to learn, to be patient and tolerant with each other, and also give each other space, be in the same space and do different things. But now we've gotten used to it, and it's super nice because we can always see each other in a good way, you know. Someone might be doing something in one corner, another one is doing this here. And so I think I really like that. Like also with my husband, he can do something over there, I'm over there. We kind of always, we're in the same energy zone or vicinity. So that's a little bit about what it feels like.
Yeah, that's such a clear example of how much like space and architecture actually does something different in relationships, right? And
definitely.
Yeah, and you know, would you tell me what it's like for you to kind of like have kids in this space, have your husband in this space? Like, tell me more about like what that you kind of like hinted at it, but like the sort of stuff it requires you to learn relationally in order to be in that space together.
Well, there's what's required to learn as like a stepmom. There's that whole topic. And then there's the space, what is required. I don't know, we get along quite well. I think in the beginning it was just knowing that it's okay to go in your, like for the kids, you can go in your room and just be. You can also go in our room and just be. You can be wherever you want to be and be comfortable. People put headphones on so you're a little bit more considerate if you're playing a game or you're doing something because we're in the same space. I don't know, but I think it just creates a certain coziness where we like feeling, we don't have to be doing the same thing, but we feel each other's vibe and energy. And it's nice to kind of just look over and smile or wink at the person across the room.
I love that. That's awesome. You get this moment, these little interactions, right? Because you get to see each other and stuff. As much as you also respect the need for each other's private space and all that, you know. I like that.
And then there are moments where I wish I had a meditation room, like I had my own little space where I could just like, you know, close the door and. But that's normal. I guess it happens. I mean, that's the thing. We live in the city in Copenhagen, and sometimes we do dream of having a bigger space that he would have an office, I could have my own office, or we could share an office or whatever. But it's really nice to be in the city. So we changed our minds. We're like, we'll just make do with what we have.
Tell me a little bit about your neighborhood, you know, like walking distance from your place. Like what are your places that you like to go and all of that? What's there?
This neighborhood is called Northwest, so it's Nordvest in Danish, and it used to be, still very industrial, so it's kind of like the hood-ish, and it's very multicultural, which I love. Denmark is generally a very white, blonde place, so it's nice. It's the one thing I actually miss the most about London or New York City is just like diversity. So this neighborhood is one of the most diverse, which I love. It's so nice, different cultures, different people. There's a sourdough bakery that just opened up not too far, which means the neighborhood is gentrifying when there's a sourdough bakery opening up. It's like, that's done. But it is nice, so we go there. It's actually in this place called a Democracy Garage. It's like we're all like companies and people working towards democracy, like grassroots are, and then the bakery is in there. So it's quite cool. So we just go to the bakery, there's a coffee shop, grocery stores, and in Copenhagen, you just jump on your bike, and in 20 minutes, you can be anywhere in the city.
That is so cool. Man, especially because, you know, I love a bike-friendly place. That makes me so happy as a bike person. Yeah.
Oh, you would love it. Everything is made for bikers here.
Oh, so great.
Cyclists, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Not bikers.
Love it. Okay, now I want to turn the corner a little bit. And, you know, I love this, like, little picture of your home and in the places that you've lived and everything. Now I want to see the connection between the sort of work that you're doing as a coach who's helping creative people have the greatest impact and stuff, and the way that people are at home. What connections do you see, even how you would recommend people to inhabit their space in order to have have a really good impact in the world?
That's a big question. I don't know if there's a direct correlation between your space and the big impact in the world. I think your space can impact your well-being, and then your well-being is how you can show up even more fully in the world. I think in terms of... Say
more about that. That's so interesting. How does the space affect your well-being?
Well, do you have it's also the people that are in your space. If you have healthy relationships and, you know, it's safety. For me, home, it's like very important, needs to feel safe. Like it needs to be a place where, you just feel good, you know. The world has whatever it has, but when you come home and you open the door, it's just, this is your space to be free, it's like non-judgmental, it's safe, it's cozy, and you're really free in it. You're really free to be and express yourself entirely as you are. And it's beautiful when you have to co-create that. It's not you alone. It's not your space alone. If you live with your partner or roommates or whomever you live with, it's a co-created. So you have to kind of design that intention together of how you want to be in your space. What kind of like environment do you want to create? And actually, it's a conversation I'm not sure many people have, but I think it's a really important one to have. Like, how do we want to be together in the space? How do we want to be together, especially in an open space? Well, one person isn't feeling it, is having a moment. How do we want to be in that? And I think that creates a sense of well-being when there's like clarity and expression where you communicate what you need together. A, what you want to create in the space, and B, what happens when shit happens in the space. And so that's like well-being to me.
You use this phrase, what you want to create in this space. I think that's an interesting way to frame it, right? Like thinking of the way that you live as a creative act, right? And play with me on that idea for a second. Like, what would that mean? What would that imply if the way that you're living in a space is a creative act?
Well, I think your life is your creative act, is a creative act. Your life is your work of art. How you live, right? How you design your days, how you design your future and step into it today. I think that's all creativity. Like, we're all creatives. We're all in the creative directors of our own lives. And that, of course, extends to our space. I think for me, there's a practical take on that, and then there's a more sort of slightly intangible take on it. The emotional one I'll give you, and then I'll move to the practical. For example, my husband sometimes says, and I love this, well, I love him, but this about him, he says, am I too much? Right? Am I taking up too much space? And I'll say, have you met your wife? Like, you're asking me this? No, of course not. You take up all the space. Like, all of you is welcome here. All of it, to just be who you are, express fully. If for some reason, sometimes we'll check in and ask, do you have space for this? When we're conscious enough. We don't do that all the time, but when we're conscious enough in the moment before we just say, hey, do you have space for this right now? There's something I want to share. Or we'll be very clear on what we're asking for the other person. Like, I don't want advice. I just want to be heard, or I do want advice, but I want to rant first, or whatever. So I think all of that is about, as a creative act of designing like the environment and the mood and the tone and how you want to be together, and giving each other permission to just show up as we are. I think that's the greatest gift you can give to any human being, is the safety and permission, just be you, whatever that means. You can hold your boundary if something doesn't vibe with you, but that doesn't stop that other person from being who they are. It's just a communication point. Oh, when you did that
there's a little friction, a little rub, but that's also,
happens.
It's inevitable. If people are going to fully show up, they're going to bump into each other, right? And
exactly.
And to let that be normal versus make it a wrong thing or something like
that. Exactly. So I think that's that part of it, how you show up for each other in the space, what you give each other just permission to be, and all of that creates a sense of well-being, and is a creative act because it's co-creation. And then the other part of the creative act is I like to design the space based on things, how I use it, so function. So for example, I don't want to swing your guests around too much, but it's like there's a bookshelf here, and there's
you got a beautiful
that
place.
space.
I love it.
Thanks. This space over here is for talking. It's for reading. There's no screens. It's for chilling. It's for guests. It's like a designed for particular activities or functions. And then we try not to have
conversing, face-to-face interaction, or just solo. Yeah, it's not a screen space, or something like that, right? Yeah.
And we designed it that way, and I have tons of. We're not strangers and all types of conversation games, because I love conversation games. But anyway, they're all hanging around everywhere there. And then we didn't want a TV, but 2 kids, we lost that fight. And then there's a couch space over there. Yeah.
You're pointing to your
which
TV.
Is another couch space in the back. And that's okay, fine. We're going to watch a movie, or we'll chill. And that's a designated space for that. So there's designated spaces for different things and objects around that signify this is how we use this space, which of course we can change as a family, but so that's a creative act of purpose, intentional design.
Yeah. And, I think this is something that I'm learning through doing some of this research, is how much interior design has so much more to it than I ever knew, right? Where it has to do with what's the furniture in the space, what those different spaces unlock for people and how they relate to one another, how they get to be themselves in the space and all of that. architecture and interior design are doing lots of heavy lifting actually in that regard. And when you, for example, in the way that you're talking about like this nook over here and this nook over there as spaces that, are the conversation connection space. And this is the space for, sit back and watch a movie or, play your game or whatever, for the kids, so that they can, these teenagers can have fun doing their thing or whatever. Right. And, that's just really interesting to watch because, I don't know, that's at least something that I intuitively knew was going on and I experienced. And it's the way that I do my life here. And I have never paid for an interior designer, but it makes me want to. You know what I mean? Like, it makes me want to give somebody who's like an expert in this sort of thing, my business in order to help me like make this physical space, like the layout of the furniture and all of that, like that much more livable and expansive for me and my family, right? So, yeah, just like a little note to self, right? Like, oh, interior design's a very legitimate profession. I knew that already, but all the more. So.
100%, but the creative act, the fun part as well is doing it yourself. Like, you could get input, and of course, super valid, and people are much more knowledgeable than I am about it. But it's also fun to design it yourself because it's an expression of you as a family. It's not easy to co-design spaces with a partner all the time.
I bet. Tell me more about that. What are the rubs, like the friction points with co-designing a space with a partner?
Well, look, truth is there's really no such thing as like taste. People like to think, oh, it's good taste, but no, it's a preference. Mm-hmm. Like, so I have preferences, my husband has preferences. The two don't always meet in the same space. There are things that are more important to him than they are to me and vice versa. So how I solved it or tried to, because we have different tastes in design, furniture, things.
What's your taste? What's his?
Oh, that's a really difficult question. Well, I think there's just some of the furniture that he had in his apartment that I would have preferred not bring over. So I don't know if it's a taste thing or not. And so how do you have that conversation without sounding like a snot or,
Yeah. Not acting superior about it or something, yeah.
Yeah, because it's not. It's just, I just have a different point of view, but that doesn't mean I'm right or I'm not at all. And so how I solved it was, you could choose the car. I know this sounds incredibly gendered. I don't mean to, but this is how it worked in our relationship. Sure. You could do whatever you want with the car. I actually don't care whatever you want. I won't get involved. If I can just have some of this stuff in the design, how about that? It would be much easier than trying to compromise with each other.
Yeah.
Because compromise is not fun. If you have to compromise on everything, it's like a diluted solution no one is really happy with. That's just the truth for a lot of these things, not for everything, but then so that was our solution, and then he's very happy, or so he says. He's like, great. I'm glad I handed that over to you. I think you made good decisions, even though I was hesitant in the beginning. And then I said the same thing about the car. I think you made some great decisions. So I think it's okay to have ownership, own different things, that what matters most to what person, and then leave it at that.
That's cool. My wife is a lawyer, and so she did extensive work on how to negotiate, right? And one of the ideas of negotiation is, rather than seeking to compromise, as you're talking about, which is ends up being a lose-lose, you look for expanding the pie and seeing what more possibilities are there than beyond. So if you focus it exclusively on what are we doing with this home space, and how are we going to compromise to make this home space a decent space for both of us, neither of you would be fully happy. But because you increased the pie and you thought, oh, not just the house, but what about the car also? Then each of you has your place where you can fully, put your stamp and imprint on it. I love that. Exactly. It's such a great example of negotiating that creative act of, putting your home together and everything. I think that could be a fascinating one, that, a solid, actionable insight that anybody could put into their lives if they're trying to think about, I'm moving into a new apartment with my partner, and what do we do here, right? So that's great. Yeah,
absolutely. Especially when you first start cohabitating, because you have your own way of design, your own way of doing, you're used to having your own home. Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, as you start to combine, is when it starts, there's a bit of turbulence. But then after you've cohabitated for a while, the turbulence is gone, because you've been, you've meshed together, you've gelled, and things just we don't have any of those challenges anymore at all. But in the beginning, there's a bit of turbulence. So how do you ease that as you get, because it's only temporary, it goes away.
Right. If you can get over that first hump, you get some wins under your belt, and then you get to live together and enjoy it and whatever, right? So that's awesome.
Exactly.
So I love this kind of like little theme we've fallen into about how being at home is a creative act, and you can see it as a creative act and design your space. I mean, in some ways, that's at the core of what I'm exploring here, right? The other part that's an interesting theme is relationships in the home, and how do you do that with somebody, and the communication involved in all of that. So that you create a space that, I think you said things like, it feels very free, it feels very safe, it's a place of belonging, all of that, right? What are some of the things, like when your home is just like pristine it's just like the sweet spot for you to be, what does that look like, feel like? What are the things that get it to that space?
Visual clutter is not a good thing. It's not a good look for me. I can't. So it doesn't have to be like, I like things to be very clean, but it's not the cleanliness of it. Well, who doesn't want a clean house? But it's more, if there's visual clutter, I'm not comfortable. So I'm at my best when there's not a lot of stuff. Stuff has its place. I just feels good. Mm-hmm. So that makes home feel really nice. Mm-hmm. I make my life easy, and I usually, partners help, but I just do it because it matters a lot more to me. So I'm like putting things in order. That feels really good when things are kind of, there's not shit everywhere.
Yeah, exactly, right? It feels a little bit more tidy and kept, and everything has its place, and it's away, or at least in its spot where it belongs, so that it can be appreciated or something like that. Yeah. It doesn't look messy.
Because I think when you see mess, it creates kind of chaos internally for me. So it's just like, I just feel like relaxed when things are organized. So that's a big one. Mm-hmm. And your question was, what makes me feel like, when am I a sweet spot? When
your home is like just a sweet spot for you. Like, so you mentioned how tidiness is part of like, lack of visual clutter helps it feel like a sweet spot. Are there any other pieces?
What's a home without the people you love? Like, that's just like, home is, I mean, there's a space for you to be alone and to also feel at home. That's good. But I think when home is at its like finest is when it's cozy and you're with the people you love and you're having a moment, whatever it is that you're doing. It's strange. Well, maybe it's not strange, but it's hard to divorce relationships and love from home. Because what is home if it's just a collection of material goods in a way? Like, yeah, sure, it can express your personality and who you are and blah, and that's fine. But home is really the people that you make it with. Mm-hmm.
I'm even thinking of a person who maybe lives solo or something, and like the life that comes into the home when they have people over for dinner, or when they have their parents come visit, or whatever it might be, right? Like have a friend over for coffee. Like there's the home as a space for relational connection and intimacy to happen.
Exactly.
And that's part of what makes a home like, tip top in your mind.
Definitely. That's actually a good point. I mean, for being alone, like, what's home? Okay. So home, well, yeah, it is the relationships you have and the comfort that you feel in your own space. I mean, it's nice to be in your own space. But yeah, no, for me, it's at least now where I'm at in my life. It is the people I'm with. It's like when I'm having a moment, when I'm joking with my husband or doing something silly, or I'm dancing with the kids in the living room, or I mean, it actually doesn't even matter if it's messy at that point. If we're having a moment and doing something that you can only do in your home, like a weird magic show or something, or I don't know.
A weird magic show.
Well, with the kids put on a lot of magic shows, and oh my God. I don't know if they could actually perform on stage, but hey, it works. It's like a dance performance magic show and then something else. They mix it up.
Sounds so fun. So family drama, family performances. That is something that you don't. Any place can be a stage for a kid, right? Like, and at the edge of the kitchen while you're preparing dinner or something, and they're telling jokes, right? That's awesome.
But when I had my own apartment in New York City, like, home just felt like such a safe, cozy space where I could just reconnect to myself and feel, free in that. There's something freeing about being at home. You close the door, you lock the door, and like you're in your own world. Mm-hmm. So, there's also a relationship to self. So we say interpersonal, like it doesn't have to, you might have a partner, you might have a fur baby, you might have whatever you have.
Sure.
But there's like, it's a safe space that's yours. Mm-hmm.
That's so
not
good.
like ownership yours, but just like you could do what you want. You could read a book naked. You could dance. You could do whatever you want. I mean, for me, freedom is a core value. So I like being,
Sure.
You're just free to be.
To even just have the opportunity to flex that freedom, whether you really want to do it, just to know that you can, right? Like in some of these situations. I think the relating to yourself point is an interesting one because, in some ways that's like the definition of having a self is like you actually are aware of yourself, relating to yourself, like versus perhaps going through life unaware or, distracted all the time or always in the future versus being present or whatever it might be, right? And you do a lot of work coaching people, right? So in so many ways, you're helping people relate to themselves, right? So what are the things that, I don't know, maybe tips or encouragements or things like that you find help people relate to themselves well?
Well, first, creating space to meet yourself every day.
What does that mean? Tell me what.
I was just gonna say,
I'm so curious.
Different people. It's just creating the space to be, right? Not to always be in doing mode, because then you're swept up in a flurry of activity. So it's just taking moments throughout the day, and everyone will have their own. It's not prescriptive. Some people, it's free writing. If you just write, in liminal spaces in the morning just when you wake up, right before you go to bed, when you're kind of in between worlds. And it's a way of just touching base with who you are, what's on your mind, any patterns, what's coming out, what things you might not be aware of. But just really allowing yourself to write freely, no agenda, no critic, no judge, just write. Some people sit in silence. Some people meditate. Some people just take a moment. Some people, movement is a good one. Like, how do you move? But a lot of it is, it's not like I'm doing this so that I can X. It's just a moment of unattached discovery. And that's so you move, maybe you dance, maybe you walk, maybe whatever you do, but it's not necessarily, I'm going to have to do 15 miles and I'm just focused on the next mile. It's like creating space to just feel what it's like to be alive in your skin and to be you, an expression of yourself. So those are different ways that you can meet yourself. Have a check in also. Just have a check in. What do I need right now? Do you know that's a simple question that I can't answer sometimes, and most of us don't ask another, let alone ourselves. If there's a sense of frustration or something, so just to take a moment and go, deep breath. Breath work is another meeting yourself, connecting to your body in any way, meeting yourself. Taking a breath and going, what do I need? What do I need right now? Oh, I think I need a cup of tea, just to stop, or I need a call from that person, or actually whatever it is. And sometimes just asking the question is enough. It's not even about the answer. It's just taking a moment to just pause and be like, where am I at? Where am I at? What do I need? How do I feel? What's going on?
In every one of those, maybe a common thread is that pause and rest for a moment, tune into yourself thing, and people have a lot of different methods to get there, whether it's meditating or taking a walk or whatever that might be, journaling. But I mean, even hearing you describe it, I'm like, it feels like a breath of fresh air, just be like, oh yeah, we get to be in the moment and tune in to even what we need. And gosh, to get personal with this for a second, just the other day, I was overwhelmed. We just traveled back from Hawaii, just underslept, jet lagged and all of that. And, it's time to prepare dinner the day after we get back. And baby's sleeping weird, whatever, right? All of these things adding up to, gosh, I just don't even know what I need. I'm just tired, I'm overwhelmed. My wife's asking me, and she's just being really awesome and just providing options for what we could have for dinner or whatever. And eventually I'm just I just can't choose right now. Would you just choose for us and just, whatever you do, I'll be happy with it, but I think I just need to kind of take a step back from, deciding even for a moment, and funny as that can be, right? It took a while for me to get to the realization of what I needed in the moment, but then it's a simple request, right? With a partner or call up a friend or whatever it might be. Right. But, so that's one of those things that I'm thinking about, because life just kind of keeps coming at you, whatever it is, whether it's work or family or travel or whatever it is. And I just see how important home is for creating the safety actually to slow down, to take a breath, to pause. Now, I want to kind of take the other direction, because home can also be a place of like intense distraction and intense, chaos or discord relationally, or these kinds of things too. And I'm curious for you, Pia, when are the times, or what are the things that throw things sideways for you at home? What kinds of things do that for you?
Well, I think as a solopreneur building, and I'm working from home. I do have some clients that are not at home, but most of the time I'm in my space. Mm-hmm. I could get a space outside of home, but it's not practical because I need a closed room for most of the work that I do. So I'm usually at home, and sometimes it's hard to make the dividing line, especially I'm not a freelancer. I'm building a business I'm passionate about to create a wider impact in the world through helping people discover what their impact is and what their dream is. Of what their life could be, which could be anything, excitingly. So I think sometimes that can pull me in, and I'm like, there's so many things I want to do or could do always when you're building something that it's hard to shut off. Like even right now, it's almost 8:00 at night because we have a time difference, but I want to do this, do you know? So it's like also, I do miss my other home, many homes, America sometimes. So it's also nice to be able to have conversation, networking calls with people that are in halfway across the world, which means I'm up a bit later. So long story short, it's just creating some better delineations alongside when to be at home and like chill and do other things, and when to work passionately. That is the biggest challenge that I have.
That makes a lot of sense. And I think a lot of us are in the work from home life, and working remotely, or at least part of our days, part of our weeks are working remotely from home. And in order to like do that in a way that it doesn't just take over all of life, it sounds like some sort of boundary, even just like mental switch awareness of, now I'm doing work and I'm going to explore all the possibilities with work, but that's got a container of this number of hours or whatever it might be, or it's time for me to turn off my computer or put it away, or whatever that will look like for people. But that's part of the thing that can creep into the rest of your home life, right?
And here's the kicker. This is what I know to be true, but there's old programming at play. I mean, most of us, especially in the States, we have a very strong work ethic. Usually you're at your desk. Even if you're now moving into like solopreneur hybrid, there's an old structure that was long outdated, but we still were in for a long time, working from 9 to 8, or 9 to 6, or whatever it is, right? Some people 9 to 8. So I think there's like this limiting, and I think it's false, belief that to be productive, it's pervasive, we're not always aware of it. To be productive, you have to be working in a flow for like 5 hours or however long. Like you need to keep at it. You need to hustle. You need to go. And I think this hurts creativity. It hurts us more than anything. And even though sometimes, myself, I might be aware, it's still hard to break out of old patterns, even like embodied. My body is used to sitting down at a desk working, even though I know taking breaks or going for a walk is actually what would be most beneficial to my business, to growth, to creativity. But we're just not trained that way in a way. We've been brought up in a different kind of structure. So I'm learning to navigate from that structure to a more flow structure that I can design is a process. It's a repatterning. And I think it's fascinating. Some days it's beautiful. Some days it's challenging. It's, because so the bottom line is, this is not my line. I can't remember. After we'll figure out who said this, but slow is smooth and smooth is fast. So essentially, when we slow down and we take breaks to stop, to put your feet in the grass, to do whatever daydream, actually you are going to move faster because you've created some space and smoothness for ideas to emerge, for dots to connect, for all of these things. It's actually shown to end up being, I don't like to use this word, but I'm going to use it, more productive, right? You're going to end up moving even faster. But that is a mental model switch. Slow, to start moving slow for it to get smooth, because when it's smooth then it goes fast. It's usually we're always in the fast expecting it to go smooth so we can start to go slow.
But you got to reverse the order.
But if we don't,
interesting.
Yes, and if we don't start to move and like design the life we want to have now, we're not going to have it later. There'll always be something else. And I'm aware of it, but it's difficult. So in the sense, when I make this amount of money, when I launch this course, when I do things, then I can relax, then I'll be fine. Then I can enjoy more. This is another false idea. If you cannot do it now, you're not going to do it later. Because later you're going to launch the course and there's going to be something else to do. So it's like a relearning of like, how do you want to be in this space as you're building, and how do you want to like teach yourself? Because that's what you have to ultimately do. You have to kind of unlearn to relearn. And that happens through being at home and different behaviors and just trial and error and process and remembering and stumbling and falling. At least that's how it works for me. Overdoing it sometimes and then realizing, shit, I really overdid that. And remembering like, this is not the way I want to be in it. And I get to decide now, which is the beauty of it.
When you talk about like kind of designing that flow for yourself and in such a way that it, prioritizes or protects slowness for you, what does that look like on a daily or weekly rhythm for you?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is like, I'm a quintessential New Yorker, so rushing is just my speed. I'm embarrassed to say how much I would rush when I worked in agencies in Denmark. Denmark is it's good for my nervous system. It's a much slower pace, much, much, much slower. I would actually rush to make a coffee in the office. And I caught myself skipping the line, which is so rude. I just stepped in front of somebody. It was my colleague to make a coffee first, and I caught myself and I apologized. But it's just like this idea that I need to get it done and I need to move fast. So practically, if I catch myself rushing, I say, stop, stop. I'll rush to my kitchen to do something. I'm like, what are you doing? This is ridiculous. So it's like just being aware. So being aware of how I'm moving. You see, even my rhythm just changed, and then taking a breath and being like, okay, and having a laugh, not taking yourself too serious. It's okay. I grew up on the Lower East Side, Manhattan, and Brooklyn. These things will happen. It stays in you. So that's just become aware of how you move and figure out how you want to move. And there's no judgment. There's nothing wrong with rushing or not rushing. If it's whatever works for you. It just doesn't work for me anymore. I want to move slow and easy to be fast.
I love it.
So that's a practical thing. Just be aware.
Yeah, and catch yourself. Like my heart rate's up. I'm moving quickly. I'm like kind of at the edge of my seat. In a way that is really not necessary for the moment, right? But for you to notice and be like, okay, actually, I could go slower now if I want. And just notice. That's great.
Yeah, and also know that there's a space for my rushing energy too. I can channel that at certain times and like be in the doing mode. Yeah, sure. Like it's an exciting place to be, passionate, doing things. I'm flowing, I'm on fire. But if I don't step out to inhabit the other space, this is going to burn me. And it's not so joyous. Anything that's out of balance is not very joyous, right? It's about learning how to inhabit both spaces and realizing that it's that balance that actually creates for me, a more like joyous being, existence. I mean, we're not human doings. We've heard that before, right?
Yeah.
We're human beings. So sometimes we get for me, it gets too much on the doing side, and we lose the plot.
Well said. Well, Pia, as we're wrapping up here, I just want to say thank you for an awesome interview. Gosh, we covered some real ground here. Everything from the way that you are in your space and, the different places you've called home around the world, some of the internal work and relational work that comes with being in a space. And yeah, thank you for an awesome interview. When it comes to, the sort of work that you're up to now, what are you up to? What are you working on lately? And how could people get in touch with you if they want to hear more?
Yeah, thanks. Phil, thank you for having me. It's been a really enjoyable conversation. I felt like we could have spoken for hours more, which is always a great sign.
I agree.
And I love what you're building and doing. I think understanding home life and how it's just an integral part of our lives overall, and what we can do to design it in a way that is beautifully works for us, I think is such a wonderful endeavor. So I'm glad you're doing that. Yeah, so what am I up to? I have a creator expansion program. That's a 6-month one-to-one coaching program that it's transformational. Really excited about working with amazing clients, doing some magical work together. So I have a few spots that are still open for that program. I also have a newsletter called Wildly Expanding Creators that launched last month, and I'm to invite people into more of a conversation together. And I'll be working on a course, or I am working on a course, because I'd love to invite people to work together, not only with me, but with people that are other in the community of creators, to support each other as we expand wildly in the direction of our dreams to create an impact in the world. So those are different ways into doing that.
I love it. Well, thank you, Pia. And I'm going to, you gave me some links to your website and to your social media and everything. I'll include a link to that in the show notes for this page so that people can easily connect with you. And, I just want to, again, say thanks for being part of this. And I've just enjoyed being connected to you, across the world. So thanks for being open and having this awesome conversation with me. So for those of you who have been listening, thanks for participating in this conversation with us. We hope it's inspired you and encouraged, some new ways for you to engage your home life and design it in a way that really works for you and creates a life that you really love and can thrive in.
And what I want, can I just interrupt you? Oh, sorry. One thing, if I could leave people with just an idea, something to experiment with and play with, like if you think about what is the one most important thing that you want to sort of creatively design in your home, it could be an energy, it could be a feeling, could be a function, but like what's the one thing that home means to you, right? Or you really want your home to contain just one thing. And then what's one activity, piece of furniture, material good that helps support that?
Yes.
So if it's safety, the one thing for me is safety. This might sound strange, but having a really nice comforter supports the importance of safety to me. It's heavy, it's down-filled. I feel safe in it. So that's just an example. And just having a think about like, what is the one big thing that's really important for you at home? And then what's an activity or an item that supports that could be something really fun to experiment with.
Oh, absolutely. Such a great prompt for people who are listening. And, I'm going to put that in my to-do list, my mental to-do list. Thank you so much, Pia. And
thanks, Matt.
For those of you who've been listening, please check out homelifedesignlab.com. It's a newsletter where you can subscribe to get a little write-up that Pia did on some of the answers to these questions so you can read more about it, but also so that you can get some of my more in-depth analysis of this conversation and other conversations, where what I'm trying to do is, see themes across the people that I have interviewed, people all around the world, experts and everyday folks, in order to see and give you some inspiration for how you can design your home life. So check it out, homelifedesignlab.com. You can also subscribe to this podcast, subscribe to that newsletter, become a paid subscriber to both of those in order to, one, support this work, because I think it's valuable and important. And I will, knock on every door to get everybody to subscribe to it, because I think it's important and I want to help people design a life that they love. The second thing is so that you get some extra perks that can give you some extra inspiration. So hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for listening. And thank you again, Pia, for participating in it.
Thanks, Matt, for having me.